Mum, you do everything for everyone else. Let me help you make your life easier. Quick, short information to make you empowered and remind you why you are so important. Because if you don't know what's on the menu, how can you choose what's right for you? Hi, I'm Alina, Director of my private practice supportive therapy. An everyday Aussie mum trying not to lose my biscuits and my kids. As a mental health professional, I'm here to share my secrets so no other mother feels alone or powerless. Knowledge is power, and I want you to be powerful. Think of it like I'm your mindset coach through all of this. Everything is backed by science and psychology. I believe in you, and I want you to be the best version of yourself. To be happy and to feel in control, you need to be mentally strong. Hello everyone, and welcome to this little episode of Mentally Strong Mums. And this is just going to be a quick little bite-sized episode, as I know we're all busy. But lately I've had a lot of people come in to talk about sibling trauma and the way that even though we're all in the same household, even though we're all biological siblings, we all experience our childhood differently, and we all have different traumas, quote unquote traumas, because of the way that we were raised and the way that we perceived everything. So some clients I've had that have come in have either spoken about their own children. Some have also come in to talk about themselves as a sibling. And then I've even had people come in, mothers who have come in to speak to me in therapy, because I have my own private practice, about their parents and their sibling traumas and how what the parent went through, even though their parents' siblings are lovely or well-adjusted or whatever that looks like, but their parents weren't the way that the rest of the siblings were. Even though there was the same household, we were same parents, all biologically connected, and how this really influences the differences. So then even now, if this is your current self happening to you and you think that my childhood wasn't that bad, I don't understand what my sibling is talking about, because they always think that it was unfair, or they were the one that was picked on, and it almost feels like the perspective that they had was a completely different household to what I grew up in. And then understanding how all of this impacts connections and safety, what family looks like to everyone else, and then obviously that secure attachment stuff. So that's very important as well. So when we talk about siblings and parent connection, because this is just going to be a quick episode, I'm just going to quickly go through things, not into a lot of depth. Some people will know what I'm talking about, and some people we will have to elaborate further. All of this is going to be in my Mentally Strong Mums course. So when that finally launches, all of this will be explained in greater detail, so you will actually understand in depth how this relates to you, what I'm actually talking about in all of these terms. So with all of everything, it's very important to understand what secure attachment is. Secure attachment is essentially, I love you, I will always be there for you, I will always have your back. Conflict is essentially a negotiation where we're all free to express our needs. I don't know if you've seen that little viral thing going around at the moment. We listen and we don't judge. It's essentially understanding that you're able to say whatever you want to say, and you can be completely transparent and honest about what you've done or what's happened to you or whatever it is. And the person, we listen and we don't judge. They don't judge you, they don't castrate you, they don't emasculate you, they don't make you feel guilty, they don't scream or make you feel bad, they don't punish you, they don't ostracize you. We listen and we don't judge. That's essentially secure attachment. A really good example when I'm explaining secure attachment to my clients is, if you got caught with drugs when you were 16, who would you call? That's secure attachment. That's your ride or die, who's always there for you, who won't make you feel bad for it. They will always be there to bail you out. That's secure attachment, right? So sometimes if there's two or more siblings or even only child, but the more siblings you have in terms of the birth order is essentially the more quote-unquote practice that the parents get to be able to be regulated, to have that secure attachment, to be more present, and to understand what to expect when it comes to children, right? I also have had clients where we would naturally think the more children, the more easier we know what we were doing, so we would be more present and be more engaged with the younger siblings. Sometimes that's not the case, because if a mother is burnt out, she's overwhelmed, she's alone, especially if she's a single mum, she's already had a couple of kids and she's done and she's over it. By the last child, and I've got a client and this is her reality, she knew from a very young age, her mum was checked out, she didn't want anything to do with her essentially. She let her siblings raise her, but because the mother was interested in the first couple of siblings, they then had a completely different experience of what it was like to be in a family setting. So now as adults, it's easier for one of the eldest children to be able to then forgive and have a connection with the mother. But for the younger sibling, it's very difficult because they still feel and had a completely different experience of childhood compared to the eldest. So sometimes, even though that's an extreme example, it's an understanding that everything comes down to perspective. So if you're watching the YouTube, you can watch my fingers, which is essentially my eyes. Out of my eyes is my perception, right? I'm dyslexic. I mix that up all the time. Out of my eyes is my perception, how I perceive things. And above me, the bigger perspective about what actually happens and the reality of the situation. So for a child, if they have emotional needs, but you don't know what they are, you could be doing everything in your power to meet them, to be happy. You give them food, you make sure that their clothes are washed, you do everything that you know how to do. But if your child, their perception is, all I ever needed was a cuddle, that was their emotional need. So then that's very difficult, because even though you're doing all of these things for them that you think you should be doing that shows and expresses love, they don't actually care about that, because all they ever wanted over here was a cuddle. So then that sometimes can register in the body as well as trauma or overwhelm or abandonment or rejection or an inconvenience or a burden or not good enough. But from the bigger perspective, the mum believes, I've done everything I can. I did everything for you. I made your life easier. There was so much love. There was so much food. Everything was clean. You went to good schools. I dropped you off at school every single day. I was always there for you no matter what. But that child goes, all I wanted was a hug. That's all I wanted was a bit of a hug. But because the mum was so preoccupied doing everything else, that was the one thing that she missed. So then that child then perceives that I wasn't loved, I wasn't good enough, I was abandoned, and then how that then carries on throughout the life. So it's very important to understand that we all have a perception, and even though it might not be your reality or the bigger perspective or even your personal experience, especially if they're different siblings, that person having that perception about the way that they were raised and the way that they perceived to be neglected because they were never given a hug, right? That then can create this perception of trauma in the body that then turns into negative core beliefs or negative cognitions in their mind about their worthiness and abandonment or rejection. That then turns into emotional wounds, and how those emotional wounds can then kind of stay in your body, right? So even if your siblings have gone through something like this, it's nice to be able to sit with someone to explain their perception about what's they perceive happened and they perceived was the differences. You in that moment don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to be defensive. You don't need to advocate for your parents. You don't need to tell them what the reality was from your perception. All you need to do in that moment is to validate them to sit with him in that moment and listen. All they need is silence, and all they need is comfort. They don't need solutions. So it's important to, if you want to have these connections with your siblings and understanding the way that some of these isn't a choice, because it's the way that my brain perceives it, and that's neuroception as well, and how then the body reacts instantly after that. And then if that's not resolved, how that can then stay with you along your lifetime, which can be very difficult and very isolating. Because imagine if that was you, whether it was an extreme example of what I was talking about, or whether it was a milder example. We're all valid in feeling what we feel and perceiving what we perceive, okay? But imagine you trying to articulate and express your perception about what happened to you and why you feel the way that you do, and then every single time you tried to bring it up, you're crazy, don't think about that. Oh, you're bringing this up again? So it's almost like you're feeling like you're being gaslit the entire time about your reality and about what and how you were raised and how your needs weren't met. So obviously, with everything that I ever say, we never blame the parents, because they did the best they could with the tools that they had. So whether this was you with your parents or this is you now with your children, we all do the best that we can with the tools that we have, and we don't know what we don't know. So if this is essentially the first time you've ever heard this before, you are then thinking, gosh, that actually sounds very familiar. And especially with my sibling or my brother, I would always get so angry at him, because when he would say that I was the favorite and I was treated really well and he was discarded and he felt rejected and he didn't feel good enough, I would always think that that's ridiculous, because we were in the same household. You were loved, like we were treated equally. I don't understand why you're coming to that. And then because I can't resolve it, it would make me frustrated. And then when you get frustrated, you then get angry. Angry is normal and healthy. Aggression is too far. So sometimes when that comes up, you're now listening to this going, I realised that I was actually, so this is about being self-aware as well as your growth mentality. I understand that now, looking at things from the bigger perspective, that I was potentially invalidating their experience. I was getting defensive, and I was also really protective over my parents because I thought they did a good job. From my brother's perspective, maybe it seems that he had a different upbringing than me, and that's okay. I don't need to do anything with it. I don't need to fix and solve it. I don't need to heal him. All I need to do is to sit there and validate his experience. So at least he has one person in that family that's that secure attachment, that ride or die, that will come and pick you up and save you. And that's all that this is, right? So it's important to understand how all of this plays out. And if you have children, so especially if you've got a few or a couple, understanding to have that really amazing connection with them. We listen and we don't judge. So I did that with my kids this morning, and we then kind of went around and said a couple of things, and the things that came out were wild. But we listen and we don't judge, So then that then reinforces that you can always tell me the truth. I will always be there for you no matter what, okay? So getting back to it in terms of sibling trauma and how we, even though we're in the household with the same parents, we're raised differently. One, we could have been raised differently because of birth order and experience. Two, we could have been raised differently because of financial stress. So maybe in the beginning we had a lot of financial stress and we had to work all the time, so we weren't emotionally available because we were so burnt out and exhausted to be there for kids. But then later on we ended up saving and getting promoted, so then we ended up having more money, which took the pressure off. So then the other children had a more connected, emotionally available parent, right? So that's another one. The third can also look like I had a lot of trauma in my life, and then that impacted my attachment and my connection. So then potentially I even got therapy, and then during down the line I was able to heal myself and then able to heal my children and then have secure attachment later on, right? For sometimes what happens in terms of a mother, if she had a awful pregnancy and then she had a traumatic birth, and then she potentially had postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety, maybe potentially a little bit of psychosis, that overwhelm and how awful that was to her, that will then disrupt the connection to that specific child. So if I, for example, had 3 children, the first was perfect, the second one was trauma and disconnection, and the third one was perfect in terms of everything goes to plan, everything is expected. I had a voice, everything went the way that I felt in control and relaxed, but the middle one didn't. And the middle one, it was awful, traumatic birth, it was an uncomfortable pregnancy, the child after they were born had to be taken away, or they had colic and they didn't sleep. They were not a potato baby. So we've spoken about in the past potato babies. If it wasn't a potato baby and there was all this unresolved trauma there, that then, because trauma, remember, is any situation that overwhelms your capacity to cope and then changes you in that moment. So then if that was you then have trauma that's associated with this little human. So that then impacts your parenting, impacts your connection with them. And even I have mothers that come in to see me and their children are 7 or even 12. And because of what happened to them through that birth trauma or that disconnection through their postnatal period, they then haven't healed that. So then the child and the mother have had a disconnection throughout this entire time until they've actually come in to get therapy to try and resolve that, all right? And you imagine that, and then mixed in with a little bit of undiagnosed neurodiverse ADD, ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, any of those kinds of things as well. That can also, because it's too much and it's too overwhelming and it's too hard and I'm drowning and I'm not functioning very well, that obviously then disrupts the mother-child connection, so that sometimes when the child or the infant, even at 2, 3, 4, 5, wants to come and have a cuddle, your body is triggered because of what happened postnatal, so that you then constantly want to be able to push this one away. But the other 2 on either side, the firstborn and the lastborn, I didn't have any of that. So my connection is strong there and I'm able to cuddle them. Does that make sense? So some of this as well isn't even a conscious decision. It's a trauma response. It's neuroception, where these somatic responses still live in your body. So if that's you, that's very important for you to kind of get that resolved as well, whether that be through therapy, EMDR, even holistic things like Reiki or kinesiology, something like that, that's able to do real body work. Because in your conscious mind, which is your forehead, which is your higher thinking, which is your frontal lobe, I want to be connected and I want to be there, and I know there's some kind of difference and there's kind of shift. But when they come near me, my body unconsciously has a physiological reaction to, do you know? So that's the thing that needs to get resolved. And that's why therapy and different modalities and holistic healings are extremely important, because sometimes talking about it doesn't always work, because it's a physiological response. And there's always that book, it's called Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the godfather of trauma, and he has that book, The Body Keeps the Score. And that's exactly what it is, the science behind this isn't a conscious decision. It's a situation that overwhelmed your capacity to cope, and then how that's then stored in your body. You'll then get triggered for whatever reason due to neuroception, and then how your body then wants to be able to push that thread away. But if that's your own child, that disrupts all that secure attachment and very difficult. So that was a little bit intense for today. I didn't expect to go into depth. I genuinely like to keep more surface stuff, but whatever. So that was this episode's a little bit of a requested one from one of my clients. So anyone that's listening that has a topic that you want to be able to be explained or know a little bit more on, please feel free to contact me about what you would like me to discuss, and I would love to be able to do that for you. All right. So obviously, if you were triggered by this in any way, you can tell because you're either dissociating because you're not listening anymore, you're zoning out. You're having a physiological reaction, so you've got a tight chest, or your heart rate is increased, or you're getting frustrated and agitated. I'll do that to you. That means that you're triggered. That means that you need to be able to do something to then get back into your body, regulate yourself, do a breathing exercise, or shake something out. Even if you YouTube, Google, or ChatGPT, vagus nerve exercises to get back into your body. All right. So just a quick one today. I hope it was helpful. I know it was a lot. If it was, re-listen to it. If you want me to discuss other topics in the future, please let me know. Send me a text, DM, email, whatever it is, and I'll be able to help you out. All right. Have a fabulous day. Thank you. Bye. If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to thank you for your support. It takes me hours to research and create this for you, so I genuinely hope you enjoyed it and felt more mentally strong. If you have any suggestions or improvements, let me know, because I'm always open for criticisms. If you have found my information useful, please leave a review and subscribe. So by leaving a review, it's a value exchange. It's good karma. I value your support just as much as you value my free information. So find me on Instagram and Facebook by searching Mentally Strong Mums, and I'm Aussie, so it's spelled MEM. And then you can find heaps of resources on www.mentallystrongmums.com. And this podcast is for you, so let me know what topics you would like to see covered in future episodes. And if yourself is a professional that is working with mums and would like to be a guest to help other mums be mentally strong, I would love to support you. So message me on Instagram on Mentally Strong Mums, MUMS, all one word. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day, you beautiful mum.